Today on Faith Matters, Nathan Thiry is going to be doing an interview with our global partners in the Czech Republic, Marcus and Amie Denny. I'm Dan Jarms, and you're listening to Faith Matters, a podcast to help update you on matters of Faith Bible Church, as well as equip you in matters of the Christian faith. Nathan Thiry is a man of many hats at Faith Bible Church. One of the things he does is oversee our outreach, global missions, and local missions. And he was recently on a trip to Czech Republic, and he had a chance to sit down with Marcus and Amie Denny, an encouraging update from what's going on in the field.
I'm here in the Czech Republic with Marcus and Amie Denny, our missionaries to the Czech Republic, and I'm excited to get to talk to them, excited for all of you who are listening to this to get to know them better and to know how to pray for them and give thanks with them for what God's doing. Marcus and Amie, why don't you just tell us about how God led you to serve here in the Czech Republic?
Well, it's a joy to have you here, and it's a joy to be able to update FBC on what God's doing. Amie and I have been here for 14 years, and we both got involved in ministry here through short-term teams. So back in 2000, even before that, Peter and Sonia Smith were here, and they were focused on working with the church at that time. And we came over on a short-term trip, and we were working at an English camp and just sharing the gospel with the students there. And I think for both of us, it just captured our hearts. We just saw a great need in a country that's filled with not just atheism, but all the results of that, just the lost thinking, people not understanding to any extent what life is about, why they're here, why life's messed up, how things can be made right. No sense of the truth of God or the gospel. And I think that, and then just seeing the Smith family as they were ministering, watching how they loved one another and their family and how they loved the lost and ministered to the believers. It was a huge example, I think, for me first, and then Amie came the following year. So, and then through that, we just began to focus. I mean, I personally was really beginning to focus on what God was calling me to do here. And part of that was looking for a wife that was willing to do that as well, that knew what missions was about, the difficulty of that, and even was familiar with, the work here. So, God in His kindness led Amie and I into a relationship, and we came here in 2009. So.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just ditto what Marcus said, only that for me, the experience was really eye-opening in that I'd never met people who had never heard of the gospel before in any form, in any way, about Jesus dying on the cross. And I think that truly is what ignited my heart to the special need that is here. I mean, everybody needs the gospel. Everybody unsaved needs regeneration. However, I'd never met people who are so much in a vacuum of absence of any of that knowledge. So that really ignited my heart, a desire and an urgency to fill that need.
That's great. We're so thankful that you guys came here 14 years ago now, and for how the Lord's been using you. Tell us about where you are exactly geographically. Like, most of us have heard of Prague, Czech Republic, but where is it that you live? Where is the church being planted? And then tell us about your focus. What have you guys been doing here the last 14 years in terms of your overall focus and effort?
In 2 weeks, we'll have been here for 14 years. And we got here, our oldest was 4, and so there were 4, 2, and 9 months. So they're all super little, and we were just in our 30s. And we got here, and we basically swapped places with Peter and Sonia Smith, who had started a church plant, I want to say 5, 6, 7 years before that. And it's just it's tough work. It's just a lot of plowing, and sowing. And so when we came in, they had been here for 13 years. They were fluent in Czech. They were, fully engaged in the ministry and, shepherding and all the aspects of that. And we swapped places, but obviously we didn't just swap abilities because we were at ground zero as far as language goes. So, but our focus, even since day one, has just been the church and building the church up and, seeing the lost saved and the elect sanctified. So we've been focusing on that, and now the church, 14 years later, it's growing. We're super encouraged to see God adding to the church, saving people. Lots of stories about how God's just radically saved atheists and very, very lost people that were in very dark places spiritually, enslaved to sin. And he's adding those people to the church. And so a lot of encouraging stories. With that comes a lot of hard work and a lot of hard praying and a lot of hard shepherding and ministry. So it's the same thing that you guys are doing there. It's just exactly the same thing. But our goal is to see a healthy church planted in a country that's, not just atheistic, but even the form of Christianity here and the state of churches generally, it's very bad. The church is very weak. Those churches that have been in existence for a long time, the denominations, liberalism's been creeping in. The word of God's not preached. People aren't shepherded. Sin's not rebuked. People aren't encouraged and edified, and they're not equipped to do the work of the ministry. That kind of thinking, that concept isn't here. There's really not a lot of biblical ministry. So our focus has been really doing exactly what you guys are doing in Spokane, just in this context here, really wanting to equip the saints for the work of service to the building up of the body. And that's the phase we're at in right now. We're just watching God slowly increase people's hunger to know God, and even see them increasing in their desire to serve and want to minister and build up the church.
Tell us where the church is and where do you guys live? Maybe Amie, you can speak to that. You have you and Marcus both speak impeccable Czech. Not that I would know, but people understand you. But I've heard your Czech is like the best in the family, maybe. So anyway, tell us where you guys are.
So Kladno is just west, a little bit north of Prague, the capital city, and it is a small city, formerly the seat of communism. It had a iron mill, ironworks that actually provided iron for most of the Soviet bloc at the time. So I think culturally speaking, it's probably some of the hardest area to establish a church. That might even be the reason why Peter Smith decided to plant a church there. So our home is just north and west of our church plant. We decided to purchase a home, and so we can just establish ourselves and our family a little bit better, and we commute into the town. But our kids go to school there and everything. So that's basically our home base. We can share there, we evangelize there, we live there.
Tell us what some of the obstacles are that you've had to overcome, just in terms of, you've already spoken to some of the challenges of the darkness here, but tell us more about what have been some of the things you've had to work to overcome by God's grace.
Yeah, the first one would be the language. Obviously, it's a very difficult language. They didn't teach that in public school when I was there, so we had to come over and just learn from ground zero. And it's a very intense language. It's complicated grammatically, and it's just very different approach than English speakers. So that was the first hurdle, just working on that, and we committed ourselves to that with a lot of time, and God was very kind to give us a great teacher. So that was the first hurdle. I think even just with that, when I started transitioning to preaching in Czech, which was brutal for everybody, I think for me, and not just for me, but I mean, just to think about the people that were sitting there listening to that, it's pretty phenomenal that even in the midst of that the church started growing. It's kind of, I think that shows us this is all of God, because who would want to listen to anybody, just totally butcher their language? But I think it showed the hunger there was for the word of God, even as people began to travel extensively. Some people were traveling 2-3 hours to be with us on Sundays because they really wanted to hear the word. They wanted to fellowship. So that was a hurdle, obviously, language-wise. Culturally, it's very different. So Amie can talk more to this, but, she mentioned the communism here that just infiltrated the thinking, atheistic thinking, atheistic worldview. It's not that people go around saying, I'm an atheist, but the impact of that, having been raised up in a culture that rejects God and therefore rejects the morality that comes with that, and rejects even the love, the kindness, even trust. So trust was just destroyed as people were pressed to spy on their neighbors and rat out, other people. So trust as a culture was completely destroyed. And even to this day, there's just not a lot of trust in other people. And so that obviously affects just relationships. People don't greet one another on the streets. People aren't overtly really friendly. It just takes a long time. So even for us as Americans, and especially as missionaries, we're already suspect. I think instead of people really wondering, hey, why are you here? Well, just for example, people rarely would ask us why we're here. So here's this American family out in this village, which is pretty strange. But people would rarely ask us, why are we here? Certainly every single one of them is asking in their minds, like, what in the world is this family doing here? But for them, that's just like a very personal question. And that kind of just shows you how difficult it can be to build relationships and, be able to share the gospel. Of course, you can come in and we can go door to door and, give them the gospel, but that just shuts the door, I think, long term. So we're trying that balance where it's like, yeah, we want to get the gospel out there, but because of Catholicism, because of communism, because even of an influx of Jehovah's Witness all around us, there's just a lot of hurdles and a lot of roadblocks. But I think that, those things are overcome as they see the love of Christ and as the gospel is going through the people that have been getting saved, and then they're ministering their lives, the radical change that people see in their lives is impacting them. And that's really, I think, how the church has been growing, and I think how some of the hurdles have been overcome, evangelistically.
Personally, my struggle as I have contact with unbelievers on a daily basis is how to trust God that He will lead and He will help me to reach out to the people around me. I think, it's easy to kind of, you have the pressing Great Commission in your heart. You want to be faithful to God's commands to reach out. And yet, and I could be very zealous, and that's a beautiful thing, to go and say, I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to go reach out to everybody. And I'd commend that. That'd be really good. However, in this environment, I think it ends up being a little bit unattractive, and people are weary and don't trust that kind of evangelism as much. I'm not saying it's not, we should always evangelize, and sometimes to hand out a tract and just to approach people boldly is exactly what we should be doing. However, in this context, I think it's taught me and is teaching me, continue to learn, to put that evangelism and all of God's ministry in His hands, meaning that being very prayerful, being not timid, but waiting on Him. And a lot of times He overcomes the barriers of what my flesh could never overcome. If I was just super bold and, decided to be very loud for the gospel, which again, I commend, would not be as effective here. He overcomes what my flesh couldn't overcome in their hearts, where He leads the relationship to another level. And He a lot of times presents need to the person who I'd like to reach out to, or Marcus wants to reach out to where they notice that we're different. They see that we're genuine. They see that our love isn't fake, and they actually reach out to us afterwards when they have need. I'm not saying that's always the case, but I think for me, it's a challenge then not to go forth in the flesh, or not to go forth desiring evangelism out of any human feeling of guilt, false guilt, but rather to really commit and trust God that if He's the author of salvation, that He will lead those opportunities, and He does.
That's great. Tell us about some of the ways you've seen God overcoming those things that have been challenging for you. How have you seen God building up the church? What kinds of things have you been seeing Him do that have been encouraging to you lately?
Well, first would be just people that have been saved. God gives us personally opportunities to share the gospel. Even with neighbors, we've had numerous opportunities. One of our neighbors up here, he kind of figured out what I was doing, and on his own was like, Googling my name and found our church website and started listening to some sermons. Very interesting. Which, by the way, it just shows you people aren't going to come directly ask us why we're here, but they are curious, and some of them do start digging around, and it can lead to good things. So this guy started listening to some sermons. We had some very good conversations, and we've had lots of opportunities to talk with them about Christ, and just continue to try to do so. But for the most part, I think what's been most effective is just the checks themselves. So we just see unbelieving family members, as Amie was talking about, that are in desperate situations. We had one of the sons of one of our members, just a very godless man, just lived in a lot of sin and darkness and immorality. And he was just brought to his wit's end. And he came on our dad's children's canoe trip. So every summer we do, for a week, we just paddle in the river and, we're camping at night and stuff. And he was with us. And by the third day, he wanted to come to church. And this is a guy who was very much against God. But he came up to me and he said, "Can I come to church on Wednesday, or can I come to church on Sunday?" And I said, like, what's what's bringing this about? And he literally said, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand what's happening, is what he said, translation. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I've never met people like this. I've never seen dads that love their children like this, that serve others. He goes, you guys are even serving me and my family, my kids. I don't understand this. And so obviously that led to opportunity to talk about the love of Christ, the love of God, and what it was that he was seeing. And so they came to church and God saved them. And they were, they've got 9 kids between them. She was waiting on their second kid together. So, man, they got married. She had the baby, they got baptized. God brought them to faith and they got baptized and they're growing. And so just things like that, I think, where we see the power of the gospel manifesting itself in the lives of those in the church and God using the saints to, be fishers of men.
How have you guys seen God using marriage counseling to bring people and to grow people in the church?
Well, I think that's another real key sign maybe of the kind of teaching people have access to here. That a lot of it's very heady, like people, if they've come upon really good Reformed doctrine, theology, they're all too happy to teach it. However, maturity comes with time and with exposure and discipleship to godly older people who've walked the walk and can show you. And we were so blessed growing up at Faith Bible Church that we were totally surrounded by mature older couples with children, families, and we were able to see with our own eyes what that looks like. However, people here are very limited in their access to such help and discipleship, those relationships. So I think many members have become members of our church due to the fact that they're totally on board with right theology. They love the Word of God. However, they were deprived of examples and of discipleship relationships. So it really is not any kind of crazy, amazing shepherding or counseling. Really what it is just taking these people by your side and showing them how to walk life using the principles from God's scripture, practically living them out, and also supporting them. It becomes a mutual relationship where we're supporting one another, and that fellowship becomes strong and deep. And then you see how God's word changes and transforms their marriages and relationships. So,
yeah, just to add to that, when Paul says in 1 Thess, we imparted to you our lives. And I think we just see you can't separate life and doctrine. You can't plant a church through Zoom. You can't plant a church through just information. You can't just send over a bunch of sermons and a bunch of books and just expect, hey, people are gonna get the doctrine and then the life's just gonna come after. No, they have to see that hand in hand. And so I think that's been absolutely crucial. And that conviction has just been solidified even since we've been here, because we've seen that, like Amie was commenting, we have seen even Czech pastors that have reformed in their theology, but because they themselves were never, under godly eldership or under godly examples, they've got the right doctrine, but they haven't necessarily learned how to implement that in every aspect of their own lives. So, I think what we say, and it's a little catchphrase, but you can't be Paul unless you've been Timothy. So you have to be Timothy. You have to learn not just the truth, but how to live the truth. And as you're modeling that, then the doctrine, even sometimes I would say people are catching the life, they're catching the example before they're catching the doctrine. So sometimes it's the other way around. They see our life, like Amie was commenting with this one couple, and then comes the opportunity to take them further into the scriptures and to show them, even right doctrine. And that why our lives are the way they are isn't just because we know we're nice people, but here's the foundation. It is the Word of God. It is the sovereignty of God. It is the gospel every day in every aspect of our lives. So that's been huge, and we want to model that. And I think that we see that we're encouraged as we see even couples in our church that are growing, not just in right theology, not just in biblical doctrine, but they are growing in their ability to live out what the scriptures call them to do. And because they've had a model either with us or even with others in the church, they're able to carry that out.
And just a quick note, one really exciting thing is we're kind of getting to the point where some of these couples are ready to pass that information on, that they're eager to establish discipleship relationships with younger people, and they're looking for those relationships, which is just, a miracle to see. It's a true blessing. So.
That's super encouraging. Thanks for sharing that, and just exciting to see how God's using His Word, using you all and other faithful brothers and sisters in the life of the church here in Kladno. Tell us about your family a little bit. Give us kind of a glimpse into what's your family life like. What what are some of the things that kind of happen in a typical week for you guys? Tell us about your daughters, what they're into now.
Coming over here, we knew that we were entering into, a very serious mission field, a very difficult place. And by God's grace, we had good examples at FBC and other, biblical churches. And so I think by God's grace, we prioritized family. We never wanted to be that family that sacrificed our family or our children on the altar of missions. So we just made a real strong, concerted effort to disciple our kids and, worship Christ together and teach them. And I think God's, He's been very kind and gracious. And I think even Amie has had a huge impact on just discipling our kids, and He's led them to the Lord. So that's a game changer. We don't look at them as like little missionaries. They were our first mission field, but now that God saved them and they're growing, they love the Lord, and they've been there since the beginning. They've watched themselves. They're excited. They see what God's done in the church. They see how it's growing. So it's thrilling for them, and it encourages them. I think it motivates them, and so it's been a great opportunity for us to work as a family, as a unit, not just to worship Christ together, but to minister together. So we're thankful for the girls' love for the Lord and for their love for the church, their love for the lost. God's using them in their respective schools where they're at, ministering the gospel. And, just like at FBC, you got, kids in the school system there. It's not easy, but it's the same thing here. All sorts of kids that are just lost and broken families, and our kids have a lot of opportunities to minister to them. So we're encouraged by that.
Yeah, I think just kind of what life looks like. I think it looks very similar to what any of lives of the families at FBC would look like. Kids going to school, lots of activities, trying to balance, keeping God first priority with growing independence. Our kids are 18, 16, and 14, and they're starting to build up their own lives and allowing that, but also trying to help them navigate the world and be prepared for being adults that can walk in faithfulness and in faith and in love and in the church. And so, it's been a blessing to even see, I'm sure it's a huge amount of Marcus's influence as a evangelist, that they really have a heart for our two oldest, especially right now, as they're more mature in their faith for the kids in their school, and they are reaching out to them. And continued prayers are needed that they would stand firm. But we also pray for our brothers and sisters in the States, knowing that the world is increasingly darkening, and knowing that requires our kids to be very, very firm in their faith. And it also requires a lot of wisdom from us to impart to them and to help them so that they would not fall and be subject to the devil's schemes.
What do you all like to do for fun together as a family or on your own? Or what kinds of things do you do here to enjoy God's creation and just recreate?
In the past, we did a lot of hiking. So we would spend a lot more time, I think, out in the, in the forest.
Every Saturday, I think.
Yeah, every Saturday. Lately, life has just been so busy. So, Lydia is in the gymnasium, which is the basically university prep school. It's super intense. She used to, she was climbing beforehand, just doesn't have even time for that. She's just, focused on pursuing the Lord and then doing school. Sophie as well, she got accepted into the Prague Music Conservatory, which is a huge honor. And she's likewise just, super busy, prioritizing the Lord and being faithful to school. So I think we're just thankful when we have opportunities, just to hang out and talk. I mean, even the kids will just be like, hey, can we just hang out at home? Just have dinner. Just talk, go on a walk, we, watch a Mandalorian or something, or, we do stupid stuff too. So it's, I think it's just a precious time. We recognize how fleeting this time is. And we just really treasure, I think, more and more. I think both of us realize this time is short and sweet. So, and they recognize it too, I think. And we just appreciate when we have opportunities together just to talk and hang out. So.
I think we also try to utilize vacation time just to catch up big time. And those hikes are awesome. The first, no one really wants to talk. Everybody's kind of in their own head. And then get into first hour, second hour, and everybody starts open up and you start having real good conversations. So we go on, that's kind of our way. We go on vacations. We kind of stick local and check and go places that are beautiful. We can spend the whole day kind of out in nature. and we just end up talking, and the kids end up goofing off, and Marcus goofs off actually more than the kids. So it's really fun.
That's great. Tell us some ways we can be praying for you all.
Yeah, even just for us personally, as we just mentioned, just that God would just increase our own love for Christ. I think the first 7 years here, because things were just so small, we were just very focused on Czech and then just ministering to the few people in the church and the few contacts we had. My ministry was much more simple. And I think it was easier really to prioritize Christ just practically. There was just more time. Now with, the age of the kids and where we're at as a church, we're churches, yesterday we had 80 people at church, and which is huge for us, huge. And there's just a lot going on. And so that I think the prayer would be, that we would, be Mary, Luke 10, just prioritizing Christ, and then that we would faithfully shepherd the church, for shepherding our kids and then shepherding the church, that God would raise up shepherds in the church. So we see potential. We see even just some young men and some young couples that have some potential and even some desire. So we're thankful for that. Just continue to pray for the elders, for myself and for Daniel Adamovsky, who's a co-elder. He's an encouraging brother and, loves the Lord, loves his family, and loves the church, and just growing in ministry together. So even just our relationship, that we just continue to grow and love for one another, and just a real, there'd be just a sense of camaraderie in the ministry and putting our hands to the plow together and not looking back. And just that God would raise up a church that really is equipped for the work of service, and that it would really be that kind of church where it's like, this is not it's not a one-man show. It's not a couple people doing the work, but it really is a church that's matured and ministering to one another, encouraging one another, even reproving and rebuking and counseling and helping one another. So those would be some of the things.
I think the only other thing I could add is just pray for unity. You can always see that as things start to progress and people start to grow, that Satan just doesn't want that. And he wants to use anything at all, if possible, to destroy unity amongst the people of a growing and thriving church. Some things, using things like pride, using things like just disagreements regarding very superficial things, relational discord, just that God would continue to build the faith of his servants, all of us, or that we would refuse sin. We would say yes to the Lord and obedience, and in the sense of taking off sin and putting on his character of the Holy Spirit. So I think that's a big prayer request. Yeah.
That's great. Well, it's our privilege to pray for you all and to partner with you. And we're so thankful for your example of faithful ministry and just love for Christ, love for his church. And thank you for establishing his church here. And we're really thankful for you. Tell us what are some things you're looking forward to? What's coming up for you all in the near future? Some things that you're excited about that we can be praying about with you all.
Yeah, we've got our church retreat coming up first week of July, and it's a really blessed time for us as a church. We started doing this. Well, we've been doing church retreats for a long time, but once COVID hit, we started doing week-long ones, and those just proved to be an incredibly blessed time, very, very strategic for the people to spend time together for a whole week, just sitting under the Word, fellowshipping together, spending time outside, just, hiking and having fun. So we'll be doing that. We're ramping up for that. That's a huge, huge blessing. Next year, we'll continue on with our men's and women's meetings. So those have been likewise just very instrumental, I think, for building relationships, discipleship relationships, and imparting sound doctrine and godly living. The women are going through
Loving Messy People by Scott Melton.
Yes, Loving Messy People. So that's been very good. They've had a lot of good discussions. We went through MacArthur's Brave Dad, and now we're going through the spiritual disciplines of the godly life, of the Christian life, Donald Whitney. And these are just basic things, but very well laid out and just instrumental for the church. So, and I just wanted to add to thank you guys as a church. I recognize, you just hear my voice, and a lot of you that are maybe listening to this, I've never met, you never met me, but I do recognize too. We'll show up at FBC, and people that I've never met are walking up and saying hey, I pray for you every Tuesday, or I pray for you 3 times a week, or, it's just a huge encouragement. And we're mindful that we really are an extension. So this is not our ministry. This is Ephesians 4. It's like, because FBC did that work, the equipping of the saints to the work of service, it's like God raised up other men in the church there and has sent them out all over the states and even to different countries. So we recognize very clearly, we're an extension of the work that you guys are doing there. That's a huge, honor for us to be supported by you, to be prayed for by you, to be encouraged by you as a church. So we just want to thank you. We recognize we couldn't be here. Missions can't happen without money. It can't happen without financial support, and it can't happen without prayer. So we're very thankful for our partnership in the gospel.
Thanks for taking time to talk with us today. Do you have any parting word of exhortation or encouragement for us, Marcus or Amie?
Yeah, just press on. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are blessing the nations. We're blessed, and through us, you're blessing, this country. You're blessing our church. So don't slack up, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. You guys as elders and pastors, just keep equipping those men and keep sending them out. And I know that you guys are doing a ton. You're giving a ton. There's a lot of cost, but as Christ said, when you guys are storing up treasure in heaven, there's no doubt about that. So just continue to do that. Keep pressing on and keep encouraging us as well. Keep telling us to be faithful. Keep telling us to keep our hands to the plow. And the Lord will come back soon, and we'll have a reward.
All right, well, we love you all, and we're thankful for you. And yeah, thanks for spending time talking today.